United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People 2007, the article of this declaration, and in the declaration what is the right of indigenous people, it is clearly mentioned. So today we elaborately want to say about 10 article. Article number 21.1. Indigenous peoples have the right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including inter alia in the areas of education, employment, vocational training and retraining, housing, sanitation, health and social security. Article 21.2. States shall take effective measures and, where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, women, youth, children and persons with disabilities. Article 22.1. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, women, youth, children and persons with disabilities in the implementation of this declaration. Article 22.2. States shall take measures in conjunction with indigenous peoples to ensure that indigenous women and children enjoy the full protection and guarantees against all form of violence and discrimination. Article 23. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for exercising their right to development. In particular, indigenous peoples have the right to be actively involved in developing and determining health, housing and other economic and social programs affecting them, and as far as possible to administer such programs through their own institutions. Article 24.1. Indigenous peoples have the right to their traditional medicines and maintain their health practices, including the conservation of their vital medicinal plants, animals and minerals. Indigenous individuals also have the right to access without any discrimination to all social and health services. Article 24.2. Indigenous individuals have an equal right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. States shall take the necessary steps with a view to achieving progressively the full realization of this right. Article 25. Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationship with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters and coastal seas and other resources, and to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in this regard. Article 26.1. Indigenous peoples have the right to the lands, territories and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. Article 26 2. Indigenous peoples have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands, territories, and resources that they possess by reason of traditional ownership or other traditional occupation or use, as well as those which they have otherwise acquired. Article 26 3. States shall give legal recognition and protection to these lands, territories, and resources. Such recognition shall be conducted with due respect to the customs, traditions, and land tenure systems of the indigenous peoples concerned. Article 27. States shall establish and implement in conjunction with indigenous peoples concerned a fair, independent, impartial, open, and transparent processes giving due recognition to the indigenous peoples' laws, traditions, customs, and land tenure systems to recognize and adjudicate the rights of indigenous peoples pertaining to their lands, territories, and resources, including those which were traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used. Indigenous peoples shall have the right to participate in these processes. Article 28 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to redress by means that can include restitution or, when this is not possible, just, fair, and equitable compensation for the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used, and which have been confiscated, taken, occupied, used, or damaged without their free, prior, and informed consent. Article 28 2. Unless otherwise freely agreed upon by the peoples concerned, compensation shall take the form of lands, territories, and resources equal in quality, size, and legal status, or of monetary compensation or other appropriate redresses. Article 29 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to the conservation and protection of their environment and the productive capacity of their lands or territories and resources. States shall establish and implement assistance programs for indigenous peoples for such conservation and protection without discrimination. Article 29 2. States shall take effective measures to ensure that no storage or disposal of hazardous materials shall take place in the lands or territories of indigenous peoples without their free, prior, and informed consent. Article 29 3. States shall also take effective measures to ensure, as needed, that programs for monitoring, maintaining, and restoring the health of indigenous peoples as developed and implemented by the peoples affected by such materials are duly implemented. Article 30. 1. Military activities shall not take place in the lands or territories of indigenous peoples unless justified by a relevant public interest or otherwise freely agreed with or requested by the indigenous peoples concerned. Article 32. States shall undertake effective consultations with the indigenous peoples concerned through appropriate procedures and in particular through their representative institutions prior to using their lands or territories for military activities.